So today we're going to be looking at Petra, and we're going to be looking at a lot more at Petra than the usual that we associated with Petra. That sounds quite aloof. So if I mention the name Petra, what does Petra mean to you? If you had 3 points to make about Petra, Keith, what would they be?
Rose-coloured sort of temple-y place. I've never really seen on pictures, although I've seen lots about that. I've never seen much more about the surrounding areas or what civilization it was from or anything like that. It was also the name of the Blue Peter dog.
Do you know what? You're not going to get any points for any of that. But what the thing is that we're going to stay away. We're not going to do as much about the Rose Red City. The temple at the end of the crescent moon. We're going to be focusing on two other areas. So when I mention Petra to you, Goff, what does that conjure up in your head?
Well, I think probably the same as Keith, apart from the Blue Peter dog.
Okay. Now, when I've delivered this week, the information that I wanted back was trade. The people of Petra were great traders, and the other key area that I wanted people to spot was that they were great hydraulic engineers. In fact, the area where Petra is today is in parts and sometimes in the main a barren desert. But the Nabateans, who were the Bedouins of the world back then, the Nabateans managed to make the landscape green. And because they were great hydraulic engineers, no rain was missed. Not a single drop of rain was missed in regards to the Nabateans. I do actually have a little poem as well by William Burgum that paints the story of Petra the way I would like the story of Petra painted. So, but we're not going to do that yet. So I'm just faffing around with something at this minute. I've just got a technical thing I'm just dealing with, and that's good. It's working. And I'm just making sure that the poem is nicely ready for us. And there we go. The image in front of us is quite a strange image because it shows Jordan, and it shows the southern desert, it shows the eastern desert, it shows Jaresh, but it also shows Petra and the Wadi Rum. And Petra and the Wadi Rum, the landscape, the canyon of the crescent moon, was the site 2,000 years ago of a civilization that had more to offer than it offers today, which is probably not fair because the people within that landscape today, where the orange and pink is, are the Bedouins, and intriguingly enough, the Bedouins are actually the founders of the Nabatean civilization. After Petra, the Wadi Rum, and the rest of the Nabatean cities were taken over by the Romans in the year 106 AD. Slowly but surely, the Nabatean civilization started to crumble and collapse. So by about AD 600, the Nabatean world ceased to exist. The temple, or the treasury, or the city of the crescent moon, or the rose red city, or however you'd like to describe it as, is the building that was featured in the Indiana Jones trilogy. And the episode that we're talking about is The Last Crusade. When I say trilogy, there was a fourth film, but us people who actually like the Indiana Jones films ignore that fourth one. And I've been so inspired about the Nabatean civilization for many, many years. And I don't know if you can see on your screen if it's showing a book that is entitled Footsteps by Bruce Norman, 9 Archaeological Journeys of Romance and Discovery. And I do quote from this book occasionally today. And this was actually made into a TV series back in the 1980s. So what would be best at this point is actually to move on a little bit with the slides and actually show you this. This is a site known as Bosra. These are Nabatean pillars. This is very different from the archaeology of the tombs that you would associate with Petra. But Petra and the canyon, the open canyon, has a very large theatre, has a colonnaded street, has a gateway, and has something very important: water cisterns by the thousands. The Nabatean world saw hydraulic engineering to its height. And I got to say this straight away. Within the next 50 years, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain will be a wasteland, because those countries are very much reliant upon the trade in oil. But I'm actually wrong about the statement, them being a wasteland, because the Saudi Arabians have suddenly started to realize that the chief export in 50 years' time needs to move from oil to water. And the Saudi Arabians are taking a leaf at the Nabateans' book. And the Saudi Arabians will continue to be billionaires for the next few hundred years by harnessing rain and other hydraulic engineering that they are now undertaking across the Arabian Peninsula. And the Nabateans were those that lead the way. And it may sound a ridiculous statement, but if you take a leaf out of the Nabateans' book, you might actually start to see greenery and trees and civilization across the Saharan desert. And that might sound ridiculous, but it's not. There's another country that's harnessing hydraulic engineering from the past. It's the Peruvians. Cuzco, the city, what they're doing, they're spending millions of pounds in reinstating the old Incan courses, their canals, their cisterns, all the hydraulic engineering that the Incans were aware of. They're reharnessing, associated with the city of Cuzco. So I've said many times before, by learning from the past, not only do you not repeat the mistakes of the past moves brighter and more prosperous future. You can see the star on the map showing Petra. And that's a very, very good place to start when I look at my notes. The Nabateans. The word Nabatean, hang on a minute, I had to get that phone off. The word Nabatean is associated with the word water, hydraulics. The Nabateans are the people of the water in one translation. These are an Arabic people, highly intelligent Arabic people. Bedouin in the past, Bedouin as they were today. But at their height of the world, these were some of the greatest people to ever live in the Middle East. I'm not overemphasizing it, because water is life, water is technology. And these people, on the backdrop of everything that we know about them, stood up to the Roman world for quite some time. When you think about the fall of Jerusalem, when you think about the Romans taking over the likes of Damascus in Syria, when you think about the Romans occupying Egypt after 33 BC, for a few hundred years, the Nabateans hold out against the Roman world. So successfully do they hold out against the Roman world that when the Romans take over the Nabatean cities, they are actually learning something from the technology that the Nabateans have given us. The kingdom of the Nabateans goes back as far as around 600 years BC. So they were an independent world facing off the Assyrians, facing off the Egyptians, facing off the Romans and the Greeks for over 700 years. It's only the might of the Roman world that eventually harnesses the Nabateans to, within that sense of Pax Romana. The year 106, the Emperor Trajan conquering the Nabateans finally. The Nabateans are a lot more than the art that they've given us, as I've been demonstrating, as I've been talking about. We've got to demonstrate via images. Another way of describing the Nabateans by a writer known as Jane Taylor is that these are one of the most gifted people of the ancient world. That is quite a statement, I'm sure you'll all agree, with people very much interested in the Greeks, and myself interested in the Etruscans, and others interested in the Romans, and so on. To have that statement as these being the most gifted people of the ancient world, one of the most gifted people, I think that tells us everything about them. We're going to move our images a little bit further on, but quickly. You can see that Petra is at the interchange of civilization. It's got access to the east. It's got access to the west. It's got access to Africa. It's got access to all those trade routes. Now, somebody jokingly wrote on Tuesday that you could think about Petra as being the place where Jesus Christ should have been born, because he would have truly been seen as being a king, because Petra had everything. Bit of a strange image to start off with the rest of the slides. This is a rock cut. This is not a rock cut tomb. This is actually a rock cut system. So if I came across this in Cyprus, I would immediately say rock cut tomb. If I came across this in Anatolia, Turkey, rock cut tomb. Jerusalem, rock cut tomb. But for when we look at the Nabateans, this is a cistern. They had thousands of cisterns, and the cisterns had various different countenances. And when I describe a series of images, it's very rare that I can actually research my images and actually find an author that's actually put a series of images together, and they feed off really well. So that's what we're going to do today. It's worked this week anyway. So this is what we would associate with the Nabateans. This wonderful image in front of us. But what I'd like to do is I'd actually like to come out of this, and I would actually like to change my background to show you this little book that I've got in front of me. So we don't need that. There we go. So this is that book. It's a great book. So those who are interested in the development of archaeology, I'd actually get hold of this book. And it's got descriptions in here of an explorer known as Burckhardt. And he was one of the first Westerners to enter this landscape. And he describes that main building, this building in front of us, back in the late 1830s, 1840s. He describes it as, this building are the remains of a stately edifice, of which part of the wall is still standing. The inhabitants call it Khazar Ben Farun, or the palace of the Pharaoh's daughter. But this is not the only one in Petra. There are a few others of these as well. Some of them as well preserved as this. Others have badly eroded away. And as you look through this, there's various different quotes from the explorers of the time. And there's one or two images as well. Rather interesting images. We're going to use these now. You can see the map there.
Yep.
And I didn't want to photocopy this. That's known as the Seek. That little if I can get this, sorry. This is known as the Seek, S-Y-K, or the Sick. And this is a very sharp canyon. And there once stood a bridge, which I'll show you an image of from this book. And if you remember the quote from the Indiana Jones film, this is the canyon of the crescent moon, which leads to Kara-Fadun, which is the building that we see on the front of this book.
Right.
And he describes his journey through this weird canyon, this weird valley. And then he opens up, and there's a great theatre cut out of stone. And the entire landscape is riddled with these tombs. And then it was explained that underneath these tombs are the cisterns. And I decided this week it would be a lecture of life rather than death. And this is in tribute to Dennis, actually, where we see the tombs above. Along this entire rock face, thousands of tombs, and underneath there's water, there's life. So life, death, all together. The process of living is in this central area where we've got colonnaded streets, some of them still standing to the original height, all from the Nabatean world, of course, enhanced by the Romans. And we've got a large temple. Obviously, we've got this vast theatre over here cut out of rock. If anyone's ever been to Cyprus, they'll have been to the site called ARCHAEOLOGY. And there's a theatre there cut out of rock as well. Very similar to that. And then what we have, if we look here, it's wonderful getting hold of these books because you can't find this stuff on the internet at all. And as you turn into this book as well, you see this bridge. And the arch now fallen, spanning the Seek at Petra. And that was, you can imagine somebody sitting there, sketching that. No photography back then. And you can see the wonderful, the other name for this wonderful, the one on the front, the treasury. It actually shows it as it was over 160 odd years ago, with a lot more detail. This is carved out of solid sandstone, and this pillar's been replaced. And it's by looking at these old images, can we really understand what these sites looked like 100 years, if not 200 years or more. And you see that little sepulchre on the top, that little sort of circular object there.
Yeah.
There are descriptions in this book that the Bedouin tribesmen would shoot at that, wishing gold would pour out of it. And no gold ever poured out of it because it was carved out of solid rock. And it's the irony of history, isn't it? That the Bedouin are firing at it with modern muskets, when in fact these were the same people who built the city. The irony of history. So,
was that bridge? Sorry, was that bridge man-made between those two that you showed there?
Yes, it was. What we're going to do, we'll show it again, even though I look scary.
That was your true face.
There we go. Yep, that's man-made. It no longer stands today. So I'm going to, there we go. I'm going to do that. Get my little background back up. And bingo. So I'm going to screen share again. And let's get back to it. So one of the things one of the things that was mentioned yesterday was that looks like it's going to collapse at any time. But it's not, because it's in relief. This is all carved out of the solid rock. And being that it's carved out the solid rock, it's the rock that's holding it in a horizontal position. So the beds are actually holding it all in. So that's not going to collapse anytime soon. But from that lady in front, you can get an idea of the scale. This would have been rendered over, and it would have been painted at one point. And this is associated with the afterlife. And directly underneath this are actually the cisterns. You may think, well, is it wise having cisterns underneath burial chambers? Because that's what they are. And the answer is it's fine, because the bodies don't go into liquefaction that we see in the West. And the rock is quite solid. So there's going to be no contaminants. And even if there were, it didn't affect the Nabateans at all. And you look at this, there's a little point I'd like to make. You look at this and you see the line, and you see the linear nature of the line. It's absolutely perfect. The carving is so exquisite. And these people had so much wealth. And that was the other point that was made in the week. There were actually three. There was trade, water, and wealth. And I thought, well, obviously wealth goes with trade. But trade and water made these people wealthy. So it all goes in together. Being carved out of the sandstone, it's eroded away quite rapidly. Not only through the sandstorms, with the actions of the sand and the wind, but actually the rain. It doesn't rain very often at Petra, but when it does, it gushes, and it has a destructive effect. Now, when I showed this on yesterday, it was oh, that's really impressive, because it looks like they've drawn a dog on the top of the ceiling of the inside of this tomb. And you're looking at this and you're thinking, side by side with Egyptian, this is boring. And then you take the boring away and you think, actually, the linear symmetry within this carved tomb is very advanced. You know, a hit of the chisel in the wrong direction. I'm not saying the roof is going to come down, but, you know, you might have a problem. But the line in there, and then what they did, they used the color of the rock to give art to this sepulchre of the dead. And this is what we see with most of the tombs at Petra. There are lots of carvings about, but this one doesn't have those carvings. And the real nature and the essence is actually the color of the rock. You know, when Western explorers find these types of gems, you can only be in awe and blown away by the true gravity and detail of the past. So this is that Sikh. And I'm sure Kathy's shouting out and saying it's not pronounced like that, but S-Y-K, that says Sikh. And it's spelled S-I-S. Did I say it? Oh, yeah. And then you get S-I-Q there. So S-Y-K and S-I-Q. Spells Sikh, pronounced Sikh. Anyway, I've got myself lost there, haven't I? Anyway, so what we're talking about is that Burkhard enters this valley, which is a very narrow valley indeed. And we've got that little description. And it mentions at the point where the valley becomes narrow is a large sepulchre vault. A little further on, I saw some other sepulchres with single ornaments. A few paces lower on the left side is a larger mausoleum similarly formed, which appears from its decayed state and the style of its architecture to be of more ancient date than the others. This is just a description. We're rambling. Over its entrance are 4 obelisks about 10 feet in height, cut out of the same piece of rock. So he's given the description that I've been discussing. And he's talking about below is a projecting ornament, but so much defaced by time that I was unable to discover what it had originally represented. It had, however, nothing of the Egyptian style. But he's wrong a little bit there, actually. He's wrong a little bit. Because all the art that we see, all the carvings that we see associated with Petra have a little bit of Egyptian, have a little bit of the Western world, have a little bit of Babylon, have a little bit of Assyria. The Nabateans use their art around, but they use their skills as hydraulic engineers to make their civilization wealthy. And then we've got a description of the theatre, which we'll go on to actually. But anyway, back to the valley. As you head down, as we will see, on the left is a rock-cut trough all the way along. And back in the day, that flowed with water 365 days of the year. We know the treasury. It's described a street of tombs and facades. And then we're talking about royal tombs. And then we're talking about the theatre. And then you go on, colonnade, museum, and path to the monastery, which is another building which is very similar to the treasury itself. And look at that. Yeah, I can see the Indiana Jones film where he heads on his horse with his gang, and you see this opening up in the film, and it is this image. But I thought it'd be a shame that we focused on something that people would be familiar with. And this is why I really want to do the unfamiliar today. But before we go on to the unfamiliar, we've got to look at this building just a little bit. And when they're carving this out of the solid rock, as you can see, and the skills of carving, the symmetry is so pure. But as they're going down, obviously, if we want to put the scaffolding there, so scaffolding's already up, by the way. As they're going down, they're carving it on the vertical, which is a different way of building. It's all carved from the top down, right? And they're carving directly into the sandstone. When they've removed the scaffolding, if there's things that they've missed, they've hacked into the rock these little hand holes. So basically, by the way, Eric, you didn't paint that little bit up there. So he's going to clamber up there with all the scaffolding gone, and maintenance work has been carried out. And there's something else that we can learn from this. In the Western world, we create monuments. We create multi-story blocks of flats and offices. And a few years later, we don't think about maintenance. But the Nabateans did, which is another subliminal clue to their excellence. I know it looks a bit strange with these holes, but I'm sure they probably would have covered them up. But it looks wonderful. But with the image that we've seen from one of Burkhardt's illustrations, actually David, is that Burkhardt's illustration? Yes. No, David Roberts, who accompanied Burkhardt. That's his illustration that we've seen in the book. There's so much more in this book from the 1840s than we're seeing today. But naturally, this is going to completely erode away. The only way of preserving this is to put it in an aspic, is to put it in a museum, or to build, to shelter over the bit of the valley to stop the wind getting at it. But they're not going to stop one thing, Keith. They're not going to stop the water. Mother Nature will always flow down the Seek. the canyon of the crescent moon. And therefore, in a moment, Mother Nature's saying that I've given the archaeology a chance to thrive over thousands of years. But I am Mother Nature. I will make the monuments you've created dust again, as in Ozymandias. But when you look here, this does look exquisitely like a tomb that Goff may have visited in Cyprus. I think Goff has been to Cyprus. And you look at this, but it's not. This is actually underneath the tombs above. This is one of the cisterns. Some of the cisterns are finely carved. But I've got to be honest with you, Keith, you don't need much architecture other than holding up the rock to store the water, do you? But we do see their skills in the construction of their cisterns. And in fact, I would like to say that more skill has gone into their water systems, is this fair, than some of the buildings that we've already seen. Maybe that's not fair because it's all part of the civilizations, the Nabateans' architectural world. And in a moment, we're going to go off. We're going to go off on a little bit of a journey, and we're going to, I'm going to look at the water systems, actually. I'm more fascinated with the water systems than anything. But if you look here, this is almost similar to that wonderful edifice that we've already seen, but it's been eroded away. And the other clue to their technology, the hydraulics, is actually the way the water has actually eroded the rock. What they did was they would, to keep fissures like this in the rock available, and they were to have various little step-like features around the landscape as well, which would aid the water to run off into their very, very large cisterns. These are all cisterns. They're all over the place. And that there is eroded away by the water. The flash floods, now you can imagine, right? I've got to say two things about I've got to say two things about the Nabateans' predecessors and the people that the Nabateans have become, the Bedouins before and the Bedouins now, right? I've got to say two things. Sooner or later, the Bedouins would have realized that if you put a tent in the canyon of the crescent moon, if it suddenly rains, that tent and all your animals and all your family are going to be washed away by a flash flood. That's painting the Bedouins as being highly stupid. So to take that away, I need to paint the Bedouins in another light. The Bedouins today still survive within this landscape. They still understand water, but they don't need all this hydraulic technology. The Bedouins have gone past this part of their civilization. They are now into another civilization. And the Bedouins will be there to help the Arabian Peninsula to bring their old technology into the modern age, being that the Bedouins are highly civilized and are highly advanced today. And a demonstration of that is that when Saladin defeats the Crusaders in the deserts outside Jerusalem, retaking Jerusalem for the Islamic world, Saladin was able to feed his army, and he was able to offer them as much water as they could drink. In fact, it's said that Saladin offered the surrendered Crusaders water, that the surrendered Crusaders hadn't drunk a single drop of water in days. They were surprised by this. And it shows of some of the individuals in Saladin's army that would have been these Bedouins that were able to know where the water was. But in regards to the Crusaders' army, the army of the Crusaders was wiped out because they had no water. And in a way, the Bedouins have learned from their past. We haven't, because we are going into a future where the certainty of water in some parts of the world is going to be in great doubt. But whereas the Arabian Peninsula and the likes of of Peru and Chile, these are people ahead of their game. So I'm going to keep this image there. And what you can see is the city of the living, the land of life, the systems, and the land of the dead and the ancestors. Images like this, in regards to Petra, are very, very rarely seen. But as a backdrop, let's go to my wonderful notes as it comes up on my screen. How is the sound today, Keith?
Yeah, it's fine today. No problems.
Good. So I'm getting this all lined up on my screen. And we start off with the title, The Sophisticated Water Technologies of the Ancient Nabateans. The desert climate created agricultural difficulties for the Nabateans. They overcame them. They rose to the challenge, creating a sophisticated water collection system, which allowed them to build an impressive trade empire in the heart of the Arabian Peninsula. If you can think just a little bit, we've all seen the film Lawrence of Arabia. And we see Lawrence of Arabia charging the guns of Aqaba. The guns of Aqaba don't face inland, they face out to sea. And you see his army traipsing across the desert. The army that he's put together are those descendants of the Nabateans who built these cities. Looking again, the biggest challenge for the Nabateans was the dry and arid climate of the canyon in which Petra was located. This was to be the hub of their empire, but not their only city. Again, so much to learn about the civilization. It's just not just here. We've seen a site, Bosra, not Basra, Bosra, and we saw their columns. And you've got their roads and everything else. This made agriculture challenging, as we said, as they had to work towards ways to ensure that there would be an adequate water supply for the inhabitants and to support whatever they planted and to resist a siege. The reason why I mentioned Saladin and Jerusalem was that an army in the desert is a dead army if it doesn't have water. The Nabateans had water. They hid their water. So anyone wishing to attack their city would need water themselves. And the Nabateans would be able to resist a siege in any of their cities. But those besieging the cities wouldn't be able to do that. Probably the reason why the Romans were able to overcome the Nabateans is because they had a structure. They had their quartermasters. They knew about the Nabateans and they were able to defeat them. But up until that point, 106, they did very well. And there's a few bits of rather interesting information. But I'll go on to that after this little paragraph. The impressive water channeling technology included many other processes, including the construction of aqueducts, terraces, dams, cisterns, and reservoirs, as well as methods for harvesting rainwater, floodwater, groundwater, and natural springs. Before I mention the other bit here, I've got to say that the Nabateans didn't control water. They respected it. They harnessed water. They worked alongside Mother Nature. They didn't do what the Romans did. The Romans built straight aqueducts to take water from A to B. Water you cannot tell water what to do. Water will find its own level. We've all heard that, haven't we? So the Nabateans followed the faults of where the water would flow when there'd be a flash flood. They followed those cracks and crevices, and that's where the dams would go. They also built terraces on diagonal slopes. And they also built terraces out of the vertical rock itself to actually go with the flow of where the water is falling at the time of those floods. And to describe the following, here we go. A method that they found in regards to the Nabateans was that they would create a contoured funnel in the ground. And at the bottom of that funnel would be a channel that would lead off into a cistern. Above that funnel, they would put some large gravel, other grades of gravel, some sands and some soil. And they would plant a single fruit tree above that. And with that very simple system, as the rain would fall, the water would flow down into the center of the funnel and would be sealed into the cistern. All those channels, the water would be preserved. And the key to this is that they were able to filter the water. They were able to gradiate the quality of their water for different purposes. And again, that's the nature of the hydraulic technology that the Nabateans had. And at the same time, Keith, the fruit tree would blossom into a large fruit tree. So in other words, what we're seeing, Keith, and everybody else, is that you're working alongside Mother Nature and everybody's happy. Water is utilized. When you water a plant, as you know, 90% of the water that you water on a plant goes directly into the ground, it disappears, right? In the West, we dig square holes in the ground, we put a load of earth and we put a tree in there, or we build a circular hole in the ground and we put soil and put a tree in there, right? What these people did, they funneled it. So what happens is the water draws off, it goes down into a funnel rather than going straight down into the ground and being lost. So the Nabateans thought, right, we can water our trees, but what we can do at the same time, the 90% of water that's lost, we can reuse. Everyone's a winner. Using their sophisticated water technology, the Nabateans were able to ensure a continuous water supply through the year. They had an intimate understanding of every possible source of water available to them and of how to best monitor, harness, maintain, and utilize that water supply. They balanced their reservoir water storage capacity with their pipeline system, ensuring a constant water supply. The system design also utilized particle settling basins to purify their water. You imagine that? This is the type of stuff that we use today.
Advanced technology, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. This is. Do you know? I don't know if you've. I don't know if you've seen that film where Saladin eventually captures Jerusalem. And in that, Saladin gives a glass of ice to one of the crusaders to drink. And a crusader's looking, where the hell did you get this ice from? You know, and it's sort of the epitome. It's sort of the reason why these people are there. It's everything. The Nabateans' extensive understanding of hydraulics allowed them to create a system that maximized water flow rates while minimizing leakage. So this is what we're talking about. We're minimizing leakage. It is not surprising that this highly advanced technology was used first to benefit the civil elite, eventually filtering down to the lower levels of society. Everyone in their society had the ability to live and to be part of the society that the Nabateans once were, and echoes of it today. Do you know, I just think how lucky the Bedouins are to know this technology. And they're not just people in tents today. They're people in tents that have got houses as well. And there's talk as well, Keith, that when the need for oil completely declines, the oil tankers will then be used to transport water around the world. Fresh water around the world, which is the way the Arabs are thinking. The Nabateans created their water collection system also so that they'd be invisible to passers-by. And people would think, mind my French, bugger me, where's this water coming from? So the presence of the water was known to the Nabateans and nobody else. So somebody's wandering into this lush city, an oasis in the desert, and there's trees everywhere. There's cedars, there's fruit trees, there's grass. My God, there's grass for your animal to graze upon. And the Nabateans say, well, you know, we do store it, but we're not going to tell you, because that was part of their wealth. Don't show all your cards in business, that's what they say. The complex systems collected water from mountains, the rain and so on. They shaped rocks into ledges to collect the initial flow of the water from the mountain, as I've already said. They chiseled channels into the sides of mountains, trailing the water flows into cisterns and dams for later usage. But that's oversimplified it. It's oversimplified it because they also used natural channels. They used Mother Nature, working alongside Mother Nature. The Nabateans built stone walls and pillars to shade the water collections in their cisterns. So they stopped evaporation, keeping the water cool and preventing the very problems that would lead to a lack of water within this city. They created underground systems that were lined with waterproof cement to prevent the water from seeping into the rock and the ground. The cisterns were very well constructed, and they are now being reutilized today, because up until about 30 years ago, there was one tree in that sort of oasis of Petra, that ex-oasis. And now there's dozens and dozens of trees growing. And the tourists, the sanitation system uses the cistern water, and their washing facilities, the cistern water that the Nabateans created, that the tourists use today to visit the ruins of the Nabateans. All of these structures were recreated with the idea of secrecy in mind, so that few would realize the purpose and the function of the structures. This protected the Nabatean water supply from invaders and strangers, as we've already said. In ancient times, as today, one of the most important factors for a civilization is water. Forget about gold, right? When you're being besieged by the Romans at Masada, right? Gold is not going to help you. Water will. This is what the Nabateans knew. If they wanted to live any distance from a reliable source of water, they had to find other ways to collect water for agriculture and other purposes, as we see with the Nabateans here. The Nabateans are a prime example of a culture that was highly advanced for its time, even today, as they had to understand hydraulics to create their impressive systems of water collection. Through ingenious methods, they were able to create a water collection distribution system that allowed their people and the city of Petra to thrive for many, many years. And this is not a lecture of why the Nabatean civilization came to an end. It came to an end because of the Romans, and it was no longer independent and all the rest of it. So, do you know what I'd like to do is I would actually like to read out this poem. And I've got to be honest with you. This might be an over-exaggeration, but it's not for me. I read this poem live on Monday for the first time, and I didn't slip up on it. every single word flowed. It's very rare that you can read a poem straight off and read it out. You've got to read it once, understand the words, and then read it out and whatever, right? It's the only one I've ever come across that flows so well that for me, it's one of the greatest poems ever written. It's by John William Burgon. And he won the Newdigate Prize for Poetry, Oxford University in 1845 for it. Obviously, not a poet laureate like Tennyson, but it's quite a good work. So I'm going to give it a little bit more of a backdrop. And if we move on a little bit. Actually, there. That's the one. Do you know, this is the type of thing you can look at and find something different every day. This is amazing.
It's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah, this is wonderful. And somebody said they would love this image on their wall. So I'll read this now. Here we go. Drink. It seems no work of man's creative hand, by labour wrought as wavering fancy planned, but from the rock, as if by magic grown, eternal, silent, beautiful, alone. Not virgin white like that old Doric shine, where ernst Athena held her rites divine. Not saintly grey like many a minster fane that crowns the hill and consecrates the plain, but rose red as if the blush of dawn that first beheld them were not yet withdrawn. The hues of youth upon a brow of woe, which man deemed old 2,000 years ago, match me such marvel save in eastern clime, a rose red city half as old as time. And I've got to be honest with you, that sounds very similar to works of Shelley, but that is 1845 and that is magical.
That's very good.
That is, and that really paints the picture, the image that you're seeing in front of you now.
Fantastic.
I think it's 11:37. I think I'm going to introduce the next bit, but before we do that, this should have been the first image today, but I've put it here for the reason that already you're learning and seeing, if you didn't already know, not to sound patronizing, that it's a lot more than these carvings in the rock. The Nabateans are a lot more depth than that. But when tourists go there, this is what they see, but there's so much more to see. But I will mention a little bit about some of these rock cut tombs. I'll dance in and out, a little bit of intercourse here and there. And if we look at that, these are more of the rock cut tombs, and rather interesting this. From one reason, really. You can see one carved there, two carved there, three carved there. Whoever was carving this tomb gave up. They probably ran out of money. Or Uncle Cecil, he needs to be buried now. So what they've done, they've roughed it out. They've put a door in there, and they didn't complete it. And I think that's great, because it sort of says, well, there's no model to these tombs. And when we look at these buildings, we don't have all the detail. We can presume that all of them are tombs, but maybe one or two are temples. Maybe one or two had other uses. I wanted to put that in there because it ties in with lots of the other things that I say in regards to interpretation. but these are being carved out over a very long period of time. It's very likely that when the Romans got there, as Christianity dripped into their society, these tombs were lost and forgotten. As the landscape went to rack and ruins, and still the city within the heart of Petra flourished, the old echoes of the ancestors disappeared for a short time as Christianity took over. The sublime simply disappears as an echo. But this is not that echo. You know, if I was suddenly dumped down in the middle of nowhere, I would say that those were tombs underneath, but they're not, they're systems. So this is how my mind has developed. You know, anything carved into rock is a tomb, but it's not. It can be a tomb, it can be something else, or it can be a system. I've got, I'm going to do a new share now. And then we're going to start on something new. And then we're going to leave it hanging. I'm going to show it a complete article. One of the things that Kathy says, don't show an article on screen. I've come to see images, she says. Well, you've got a little bit of an article, then you've got images. So I love winding her up. So here we go. And things wouldn't be the same if I didn't mention her name 20 times in a lecture, would it, Keith? All the things we were saying about her before she started coming on these.
Oh, bless her.
Bless her, exactly. And one thing to be said is that if you do dig, you do see that other edge to Petra, i.e. the water. He's talking about a few conflicting dates. The dates that I've got goes back to 586 BC. This one says 300. But we can agree on a few points here. 106 AD is when the city is taken over by the Romans, the Trojans. It's abandoned by 600 years AD. It's in the heart, it is centered between mighty civilizations of the past and the current at the times of the rise of the Nabateans. The Egyptians that were now a slow echo. Babylonians the same, but the Assyrians a great civilization acting alongside the Nabateans. This would have been a city that had seen the Greeks and had seen the rise and fall of the likes of Alexander the Great. As a result, over time, many exterior culture, political and technologies influenced the history of the Nabateans, their art and so on. Nabatean kingdom included Jordan, even southern Syria, the Sinai and so on. And here we go, another meaning for the word Nabatean. The verb nabat in Arabic means for water to percolate from underground to the surface. So they're very much associated with water, these people. And this nice little map here illustrating the old worlds. So you've got the Nabateans here. You can think about the Egyptians, Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. And I think this is really, I love little maps like this. And we'll just read this out quickly and then we'll have a break. Petra's location at an intersection for caravan trade from Arabia, Africa and the Far East sustained the life and wealth of the city and allowing appropriate water supply for infrastructure for its survival as a result of the complex topography and the limited water resources of the area. Water infrastructure technology passed on through the ages, obviously from the Egyptian, Mesopotamian, Minoan, Hellenistic, Greeks, Romans. Petra was able to develop magnificent water infrastructures for the arid area. I know I've repeated that. Nabateans a tremendous understanding of the natural flow of water in the unique surroundings. The natural flow. I know I've mentioned that, but that's very important with these slides after the break. The infrastructure, the channels, the basins, the aqueducts, the dams, flood harvesting, a new word for me, groundwater harvesting, another one, a large range of size, types, and systems. Their crop, in other words, could be seen to be stored in the dams and distribution tanks and springs, rather than barley and all the other things. Throughout the Petra area, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of systems. So we move on from this building after the break, the Treasury, the Al-Khazna. So what we'd like to ask is, Keith, are there any questions before we take a break?
Did they build bathhouses in the same way for their population as the Romans did? Do we know?
Slightly different. We've got one image of a bathhouse. These seems to be more cuts into the ground. And these people had so much water that they didn't need to build them like the Romans. Because the Romans were into aqueducts, water, getting rid of the water. The Nabateans were into natural water, reusing that water, putting it into different processes. This is what the Nabateans are about. So it is different.
Yeah.
When the Romans came to take over the city, they started building straight aqueducts, and the Nabateans are thinking, why? Oh yeah, because we've always done this. Actually led to the abandonment of the city, because that's not the way you harness water when you've got flash floods. You go with the water when you've got flash floods. You don't try and put it into a canal, or you don't try and sort of put it into an aqueduct, because the water will destroy the aqueduct if you make it straight. So, okay, anything else anyone would like to say? Right, okay, here we go. Stop the share. And I do believe, here we go. And I'll come back to you now. So I've got to unmute everybody. Chris has been very good. Chris hasn't said a thing, which is fine. I've unmuted everybody. So Ellen, is there anything you'd like to say? Nice of you to join us, Ellen.
I've been really busy.
I know you have, sweetie.
No, but I will watch the recording later on today, if it's out for today.
Okay, good. What about you, Chris? Anything you'd like to say, Ellen? No?
Can I ask if where they actually built their houses, were they stone as well, or did they?
Yes, they were. They're basically in the middle of this whole burial landscape.
Right.
And the point is that's a really good point, which I've missed the whole week, actually. One of the points is that they've only started excavating those houses over the past 30 years. And they've only started understanding them. So that's the answer. They are there, but they're only starting to excavate them over the past 30 years.
Okay.
Because it was too easy. You've got a rock cut tomb. Let's just go on and have a look at that. But there was usually nothing in them. Pam, Goff, anything you'd like to say?
No, just I'd like to go there.
Goff? No?
What was the population of Petra when it was at its height?
Do you know what? I've already been asked this. I would say at least 20,000 plus. And
A lot.
what you've got to think of, I think that figure could be estimated quite finely. If somebody was able to find all the systems and all the water courses, you could calculate how much water would be needed for all these people and visitors and passers-by, and you'd probably get an accurate figure within about 1,000.
Okay.
Jim and Chris? No? And Karen and Lady Kathy, you've been unmuted. Why haven't you unmuted yourself? No? Anything? Right.
Nothing.
Okay, I'm going to take a break. Right, okay then. We're having a break.
Okay, coffee break.
Coffee.
No, I'm not sure, actually. Oh, hello, hiya. It's KARL-JAMES, LANGFORD Archaeology Company Media. I understand we had a call off you. Yes. Yes, we did. Yes, we did. I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure somebody's spoken to you since. Yes, the books are on their way. Yeah. The thing is, I did have a conversation, and so it couldn't have been you again. So okay, so what the books are on their way, so that's fine. We're either going to drop them off tomorrow, or they'll be in dispatch in the post to arrive on Monday. So look, not a problem. That's fine. You have a great day, and hopefully we can get some trade in through the doors. So that's what you need. Okay, speak to you soon. Take care. Bye. Bye. Which one do I take out? Right, I take out that one, I think. Okay. No, I don't. I need to put that in. I need to move that file now. So I've got operational memory on the computer. Sit down in a hole somewhere. I think that's what I probably need to do. Every day, every day, every day, every day, every day, every day. Ferry across the Mersey. La 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 la. Ferry across the Mersey. Oh, I wish I was in a land of cotton. Oh, I river forgotten. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. For I wish I was in Dixie. Away, away. Are you not enjoying this, Kathy? I don't think she was enjoying her. I don't think. Sometimes, Kathy on that minibus, right? We're going to have a good old sing-song. The wheels on the bus go round and round, round and round, round and round. The wheels on a bus go round and round. Take it, baby, all year round. Do you know what? I think the only reason why Pam takes part in these classes is because she loves my singing. It's a fact. It's a fact. It really is. Do you know, I think Pam is amazing. I'm not going to tell her, but you know. I'm glad nobody can hear me. Do you know what? Talking is a sign of sanity. Or in my case, normality. Well, you know. Sorry, This is. There it is. I can have to not do anymore. La 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 la. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, doo-doo-doo, just like the ones in Stalingrad. And the bombs are dropping, and children's corpses are rotting. We hear Stalin in the snow. La 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 la. Right, so I've done that. I've done that. Memory done. So I've done that. Video.
Writing's not that easy, but Grammarly can help. This sentence is grammatically correct. Co jest z tobą? Sedzisz jak słowo, a wobec nemluvíš. Někdy mám pocit, že mě nevidíš, že o mě málo víš. Na první pohled já myslela, že budeš správný kluk. Z tebe se zatím, jak ukázal čas, vykuval samouk. Neslyšíš můj smích ani pláč, a místo mě máš počítač. Obrazovka chladná jak orchidej, tak si mě dnes do programu dej. Můžeš ze mě, jen budeš chtít, dělat robota. Dej mi popel, co udělat mám, ať ti nedotám. Napoj mě zkrátka na terminál a všechno bude fajn. Budeme spolu, já budu tvůj stroj a ty můj Frankenstein. Neslyšíš můj smích ani pláč, a místo mě máš počítač. Obrazovka chladná jak orchidej, tak si mě dnes do programu dej. Chtěla bych být robotem, 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 možná bys mě měl rád, měl rád.
Resume the recording, and let's share the screen. So this is an absolutely wonderful article. It's it's rare that I can actually find an article that's got everything I need in it, and actually with very little writing. So we've said this about the treasury, we've said this about the Sikh, and basically, as we follow this now, when I refer to the Sikh, it's that narrow valley that then opens up into the Petra plain, and then on the left, you've got the theatre. On the right and all over the place, you've got the rock-cut tombs, and in the middle, you've got the city itself. So when I'm explaining this now, that's where we're at. So these images themselves, I will flow past them quickly, or I'll flow past them in an easy way. And you could refer to it as the Wadi Musa, but let's refer to it as the landscape of Petra. Now, in the introduction and everything to do with the water, it's quite clear if you look at this illustration, not illustration, image, that you can see. Hang on a minute, my mouse seems to be mousing around, so I'm just going to put my mouse on there. Okay, my mouse is out of action. Right, there we go. No, it's not. Right, so looking there, you can see a fissure in the rock, and there you can see a cistern. Now, the interesting thing about this cistern is that is the original entranceway. That's as it's been carved into the rock. So then beyond, you've got a suspended ceiling. So in other words, you've got a space behind where there's rock cut pillars, and that's where the water's stored. And that fissure itself, those fissures are being manipulated to draw in more water into these water systems. Now, I've completely made it complicated by saying dams and drainage and cisterns and waterways and so on and so on. But it is a very complicated system. And I'm only hoping that we can glean a little bit more from these images than just a load of images. One thing they're doing today, and we saw this in our notes, this image was not available 30 years when I first started to become interested in Petra. And what they've done is that at times, when there's flash floods, these utilize the natural dried up riverbeds that have always been there. And what the Nabateans simply planned was that these riverbeds, we need to harness the water. And what you can see here is the old, that again, you can see the old, and you can see the new based on the natural. This is everything. It's almost as if we have an archaeology that is monumental without the artifacts when you go there. So you're looking at lots of cuttings, which are entirely more important than any artifacts that you could look at. This is looking down at the Sikh. The Sikh, the Valley of the Crescent Moon, and then you go into the open area, as I keep saying. And on the left, further down, you've got the Rose Red City, or you've got otherwise known as the Treasury. So this is the entranceway. It's quite a narrow entranceway, and immediately you can think, right, if you're going to get access to the city, this is quite defensible. And a little bit further on down here, there was that bridge that we've shown you earlier on. Now, this is a natural cut. This has been eroded away by the rainwater and the flash floods. Somebody said, what's all the black stuff on the side? And I said, well, that's bacteria. That's basically small, that's the lichens, that's the mosses, that's the bacteria, that's life on that rock. and it's shaded from the direct sun. So that's what the blackness is. It's life. And again, that sense of life is this channel. Now, how does this channel work? Well, you've obviously got when the rain comes down, and it's coming down the slopes, and if you're caught within this, your body's going to be battered against the rock. But what they basically said that they can't channel off this natural water course. What they need to do, they need to further on allow the water to go into cisterns, and then there's a channel that works alongside it, which is this channel. And this channel itself is cut into the natural rock. It follows the contours of the rock, and any excess water coming down the rock is going to end up in this channel. So water would flow and would then head into the overhang and then head into this water channel. It's said that the water channel runs with water all year round, and it's fed by water systems further up and water systems along. There's also areas, there's also squares and various other things set out where there's stabilization tanks, where they filter the water and so on. So that's all the technology of just that one system. And then eventually the water is all, makes its way into different courses further on down. So so immediately when you're heading as a trader in the olden days, you're heading down that and you're understanding there's something very special going on. Another point to be made, which I've completely missed out, is that along this route, lots of it was capped off, so it would avoid water evaporating, but you couldn't cap it all off because the water needed to get there in the first place. So that's that point. But it adds to some of the mystery. You know, people wandering down here, hearing flowing water on their left, it would have been quite strange in the heat of the summer months. And as it goes off, there are different little offsets, little waddies that go off, and rock cut channels. There's architecture leading the water off into great cisterns. And that's the channel that we mentioned on the left as the seek as it runs down. It's cut out of the rock. And the process would be that the areas that are not capped off to stop evaporation. And it's probably the process would be, is that they would be aware when the rains would be coming, this would be left open. And then in the heat of the summer months, this would be capped off to stop any evaporation. We do find one or two caps on it along the route, but this is all completely carved out the rock. So as the water's coming down, it would run along the rock and it'd be gently guided naturally into this system. And again, the importance of the system to the Nabateans cannot be underestimated. And these are some of the little runoffs from that system, all cut out of rock, very little stone added. You can see there's a little bit of architecture there, but it's all wonderfully cut into the rock. And the point about the natural flow of the water and using the natural landscape, the landscape of Petra has all these little canyons, cracks and crevices, as I keep saying. And you can imagine that there's a flood coming from the rear of there, running off the rocks. And what they've done is built a bit of a dam across it, as you can clearly see. And then what you can see is that they're then going to regulate the water with sluices along its water channels that lead to either directly into the systems or directly into the city itself. It's quite likely in the summer, in the heart of the city, there were fountains spewing out water in the direct heat of the summer months, which has to be a point of everything that we've been talking about. But there's other technological innovations that we'll come on to. Now, that is one of the technological innovations. So to actually get access to that little dam with a reservoir behind it. And another point I will make is that they're actually starting to reinstate lots of the reservoirs and dams as well. And in one of them, you can actually see the water in it in the summer months. It's great to see that. And one of the innovations that must be pointed out is to get access to this dam, you've got steps. But what's happening is that the sluice gate, probably in the height of the rains, this is going to be left open because this would damage the dam or destroy the dam. And then the sluice would then be placed up to block the water flowing. And then as the water would rise, it would simply go over the top and then would gently flow across this channel. The excess would then flow down this channel. Hydraulic water management. They knew what they were doing. And we know that this system worked because not only are these steps that would be used for access badly eroded, this is eroded and you can see water channels born into it from natural water flow associated with these flash floods. And learning from this, it's great that the Peruvians are really starting to, I know it's thousands of miles away, looking at their own Incan channels and thinking, right, we can reuse this. And yes, the Jordanian government are doing the same. And again, when we think about the Jordanian government, you have to think that the Jordanians are going to be in the same situation as the rest of those people across the Arabian Peninsula. So making the best use of the water for the Jordanians is their future. Can't just rely upon tourism. A stilling basin. And this has been restored, again, making the use of the landscape. And you can see life. And so the stilling basin, that's going to be part of their water filtration system. And you're going along the corner and you're thinking, that's green. It must be moist. Obviously, these systems remain moist all the way around the year. So more of these settling basins to settle the water, so it purifies the water. And again, more of the Seek aqueduct, the natural cut aqueduct. And again, the point I would like to make, which, you know, why didn't they have these? Why didn't they simply have straight channels? Well, if you built a straight channel up against this wall, when the flash floods come in, the flash floods are going to simply pound against this man-made channel and destroy it, and you're going to lose the water. So if you use the natural course, everything's going to work perfectly well. And what they've done along parts of it, where the Seek is actually linear, they're able to improve the channels alongside it, but the rest of it is the natural contour. And I think that's great. Whoever took this image must have taken it hours after it rained, because there's rain there. And again, it's not often that they have rain. You know, they can go months and months without any rain at all. And go into Al-Khazna, the treasury, and what I said earlier on. This is another image of what they've done. They've taken a natural fissure in the rock. Not as much water's flowing along here. So what they've done, they've put this management set of steps along it so they could unblock sections of it. And then you've got these steps cut so you could gradiate the water. So it's not a crashing torrent going to the bottom. It's like a gradiating water system. And then you can clearly see there that that's been eroded away. And you start to look at the monumental landscape, the high place of sacrifice. Probably not, but that's the name. But even with their temples, even with their structures, I know one of you asked, I think it was Ellen, where did they live? Everyone would have had a water management system. So when you go to the likes of Cyprus today, you've got these great tanks on the roof. So that's part of their water management system. And these people are the same. There's nothing different. Having access to water and small sacrifice area with drain, well, that's just a name given to it. But these systems, again, water in it. They do hold water. There's the proof of it. And if you look down there, the a point to 2 points to be, actually 3 points to be made here. The first point is that these rock cuttings and the cisterns are everywhere, right? So these rock cut temples, tombs are everywhere, and the cisterns are everywhere. It's almost as if they live alongside each other. So that's to be said. The other thing to be said as well is that even now they're finding more rock cut tombs, and even now are they finding new water systems. So the person who asked how many people lived in this landscape, I gave the figure of 20,000. The reason why I wanted to give the figure of 20,000 is because it ties in very much with the area and the population. For example, when you compare it with Pompeii, Pompeii was able to support itself. You can only have a city like this if it's able to support itself. If you have too many people, water's going to run out. So I've got to be very sensible. If I'd have said 100,000, no way. So it's all about management. It's also about managing people as much as trade, because what you don't want to do, somebody mentioned in one of the lectures, they said that they had read somewhere that traders would enter the city via the Sikh, and they would be met with goat stomachs, which would be filled with water. And the traders would be desperate. They would say, well, we haven't had water for ages. And they said, we've got loads of water here. Would you like one of these canteens, a goat stomach full of water? Yeah, brilliant. So they would buy that. So before they've gone into the center of the city to trade their goods, they've already parted with some of their money already. It's in water speaks. Water's the volume of life. And this has got an interesting, you've got, Mark, the cistern at the triclinium of the garden. I like that, all these different names, and what we mean by that, we're going to go on to now. Now, that's interesting because you've got that building, which is known as the triclinium, and then you've got alongside it, you've got a dam. And you're thinking, how unusual is that? You don't go to Petra and find you don't go to, oh God, my head's gone. Olympus, the Oracle, what's that place called again? You know the one?
Parthenon.
No. God. Anyway, right. And let's go with somewhere else. Yeah, the Parthenon's a good example. You don't go to the Parthenon and find temples with reservoirs next to them. You don't go to some of the temples on Sicily and find water management systems, right? You don't see it because that's all somewhere else. That's all the water's usually led into Greek and Roman cities via aqueducts. It's always outside. But when you think about Petra, you've got reservoirs and dams alongside these temples, because again, life and death comes very much together. And again, any runoff from this landscape is being stored. And I think what's really interesting, guess what's in front of that temple? A cistern full of water. You know, it's like it's a triclinium, and the definition associated with a temple or a place of the dead, and or is that the wrong name for it? And you're thinking, well, whatever the principal use of this building is, you've got a cistern directly in front of it, so you've got to walk over the cistern. It's like that, well, life, death, and death to life again. And that indicates to me that there's different channels leading into it. That indicates to me that there would probably be a grid over it. So it's almost as if you're looking down and then you're going into the building and you're leaving it. You could interpret in a different way, but one of my suggestions, I'm not even going to open my mouth on that one. But it comes along bodily function, and you can work that one out. But that's just too bizarre. So what you've got these sedimentation basins. And the sense of a sedimentation basin, you could actually grow things there as well. This is all working. And it's that sense of drain off and all the channels leading into systems. And along the way, looking at all this, you've got little sort of niches in the wall with little statues in. I like this one for another reason. You're thinking that this is actually on the slope. And with it being on a slope, you're thinking, right, the natural rain's falling. And then you've got a dam-like structure. And then you've got all these little weird gradiating steps. And then you've got this slope. And this whole enterprise. And I've got to say that they had water for everything. Somebody asked earlier on, human waste. There you go. It's all relevant. And I thought this was again interesting. So this is carved out of the side. This is carved off the rock. So as much energy is being placed into their water systems as being placed into carving the tombs of the temples and the columns for the streets and so on. One thing that does, I have a question in my head. If I'm showing you all this and it's obvious, yeah? How is it the Nabateans were able to hide this technology if it's out in the open? So am I disagreeing with some of the notes that I've read out? And I think I am, because it's not easy to hide. Surely if you've got a trader coming into the city and I say, well, where's all your water coming from? Oh, we can make out that over there is to do with storing water and so on. I can't readily think how easy it would be to hide these systems. And albeit that it's going to suddenly rain and you're going to have to be ready for it. So you can't cover most of these things up. So little questions as I'm going along. And again, what we've got there, the channel leading along steps. So again, you've got three gradients. You've got a natural water a cut water channel taking natural rain off to cisterns, and then you've got maintenance steps, and then you've got these gradiating channels to sort of gradually let the water down, so it's not completely subsuming the cisterns and flooding them and damaging them. So again, very, very important. Lots of these channels, when you go to places like Cyprus and Greece, you have lots of these channels, which are sort of rectangular boxes with a linear cut down it, and these would be laid out, but lots of these are cut into the rock. And looking again, temples, cisterns underneath, and again, this dotting. Again, if you looked at something like this from anywhere else, these would all be tombs, but they're not. The tombs are above. And they've got their own wonderful ways of doing these things. And again, back to the notes there, showing a natural system of runoff. Water harvesting cavities can form at the base of this type of natural system. So this is what we're talking about. It's just rained, or it's rained a few days ago and there's still capacity in the system. Again, that sense of working alongside Mother Nature. All of this rather interesting landscape and all the natural erosion with the systems. And the Nabateans would have realized this is little Petra. This is another little seek that goes off. So if we can think of the rain, if you're caught down this channel in the rain, it would kill you. So they would have thought, right, you know, we've got to do something about this. And the other thing as well is that with all the water flowing into the center, it's going to naturally wash away the city or damage the city. But these people knew how to deal with it. So it never damaged the city. Everything was fine. And again, that life and death, and it's all together. And they should make more of this. They should make more of this in schools, because people need to look at old technologies and realize how these technologies can be utilized today. Lots of the systems of over natural time are open, but you can clearly see water in there. This is another one that they've actually started using. There's piping coming off it, so that's going to be useful for the tourists. And as you go down there into the dark unknown, look at that. Now, earlier on we mentioned about, you know, cutting these cavities, and they're rough, but no, they're not. Lots of them are really fine architecture. So naturally, you can cut this out, and then you can use the blocks in building the city. And it's so pristinely made that the effort placed into this is again the same effort that they place into building their other works. Look at that, it's great, isn't it? Absolutely perfect, the line there. And obviously these large cisterns, lots of them. Another one there, as they're utilizing the landscape. And there, a Nabatean reservoir which has been reinstated, and there's water in it. So if in 60 years' time the Petra Canyon is full of trees and nothing but trees, don't be surprised. The sense of the caravan road, that goes into the wealth and trade. And again, lots of these images associated with water storage, settling basins, cisterns. There we go. Life coming back in again. They've just sort of tweaked some of these systems, and they've managed to get them up and operational today. So within the center of the valley, there's massive storage systems as well. And those slots there are to support beams. So they would have beams across there, and again, a suspended floor, and obviously water storage in the heart of the city. Lots of it. All this evidence of water storage, rock cutting, and this is a nice little one. What they've done here, they've cut, they've excavated out of the rock, and you can go down the steps to maintain it. That's going to fill up with water, and obviously this would be perfect for offering water for animals and so on. That would be absolutely perfect. That would be pretty good. So again, lots of these all the way around. Cisterns, look at that's all carved out of the rock. Cistern with settling basin. So obviously the settling basin, you're going to have different gravels in this area, and then that drains off into the cistern as it purifies it. Because obviously it would get very cloudy naturally from the sands and the rock as well. Sort of unharmful contamination. You could drink it, but it would obviously be a bit cloudy. So all these here, and again, a natural source where there's a crevice in the rock, and they thought, right, we'll keep that water, will regulate it. And somebody asked earlier on about swimming pools. And that's a reservoir, possibly a swimming pool, in the heart of the city. So this is readily available water. This is actually Roman technology in front of us. And I just wanted to mention this quickly, that what the Romans did, they regulated it in a different way, and it was not working with the landscape. And unfortunately, what you do see with the Roman systems, there's no water associated with them anymore, where there is with the Nabatean. So over brawn and other engineering, Nabatean intelligence and technology wins. This is a huge rock cut system with plaster on its walls and support location for arch covers. So this itself is smack bang associated with the city. Again, an absolutely huge system. Again, cut out the rock, that's where they're storing excess water. A reservoir associated with the city as well. The landscape you're talking about is where all the common people would have lived. This is the archaeology that they're excavating now. And this is all cut out of stone. Whereas you saw with Roman masonry, it's all sort of cut out of stone and stuff. The Nabateans are keeping the linear line, and that is all cut out of stone. And guess what? So's the arch. Amazing that, isn't it? That the arch is actually cut out of stone as well. Where the Romans would actually need to build their arches, the Nabateans didn't need to. They carved it all out of the rock. So hang on a minute, I've gone a bit too far a minute. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a look at some of the buildings. And again, all these systems. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have another share. Coming back to my images. Bingo. So here we are back to the original images. Is that what you're seeing, guys?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, we've seen that, and we've seen these. Now that's a Roman stroke Nabatean system. I know I've shown that in the past before. I've chucked that in there. I'm not exactly sure where that is associated with the city, but that's actually cut out the rock. And you've got Roman and Nabatean architecture there associated with the underground aqueduct. And we got to this image again, which I absolutely love. And again, just something to be said about this briefly. You've got the rock cut tombs, the cisterns. When you've got your flooding, this dry river opens up into a torrent. And as people sort of heading to the valley and the landscape, the tourists, other than the marvels that they've already seen, they start coming across more marvels. The city itself. Now, you can see these columns. This is usually missed when people think of Petra. And I do apologize, I don't have many images of the archaeology that is in the heart of Petra, because I wanted to concentrate on the issue of life and water. But that is truly magnificent. But what we also have, hang on a minute, that's what I wanted to show you. So that slide's slightly out of sync. So again, if you're in the city, you're not going to be able to see these rock cuttings, because the city is going to have tall buildings, which are going to have colonnades, 2-3-story buildings. So the landscape beyond is going to be hidden. And the landscape's going to be full of trees and all sorts of wonderful things. But again, that's a really nice photograph, a really nice panoramic photograph. And this is a rock cut tomb. This is the rock cut theatre. Sorry, this is the rock cut theatre. And this is magnificent. This is all cut out the rock. And could you imagine that the people to carve this out of the rock must have been expert mathematicians? Their symmetry is perfect. One little mistake with carving one of the stone benches here would have put the whole thing out. But it's that level of perfection. And this is a theatre of the Nabateans. This is the people that had greatness and could afford to talk about their greatness because they didn't squander it. And I got to be honest with you, this by far is the best image of the remains that I could find. I love this image because this is as dramatic and as impressive as the Treasury building itself, to me anyway. You've got a pedestrian access there. You've got another pedestrian. You've got the traffic access here, the camels, the horse, the carts, the wagons, and so on, entering Petra itself. And it must have been a true marvel. It's almost as if you're hidden from the outside world because of all the shade created by the trees and the buildings and the columns and the chatter in the street and the animals. It must have been a marvel back in the day. If somebody said to me, would I prefer to go to Petra or Pompeii, I would go to Petra. I'm selling out my Roman love quite cheaply there. So a temple, huge temples, such as this one. And I remember one of my young explorers said yesterday, he said, oh my God, that's impressive. It is impressive because the way it's constructed, obviously, this is the linear line out of blocks, one on top of each other. But they're using the contours of the land to build this temple. And the symmetry there is perfection itself. Obviously, lots of the columns have collapsed since. But again, the skills of the Nabatean in another direction. 2 images left. This one to compare with this. And this is basically the name for this. Oh God, I've got the name in here somewhere. The monastery. This is what this is called. This is called the monastery. So it's the little monastery or something. But anyway, this site itself is very similar to the Rose Red City, the Treasury. So there are lots of examples of these buildings carved out of the rock. And again, finally, place de resistance, the theatre in its all. It wouldn't take much to rebuild the bits of that need to be rebuilt. And that would bring the Nabatean world back. The only thing you'd need then is a few trees, a trickle of water, and you'd be complete. And the Nabateans have come back from the past. So what I'd like to say is that's the end of that now. Are there any questions?
No, that's very good.
Thank you
Not
very
for
much.
me. Thank you.
Thank you, Goff. I'm going to let everybody speak now. I tell you what, Chris and her opening her crisps and all that noise earlier on, couldn't believe it. Pam, anything from you?
Only the name of that book and the author that you had.
Right. Actually, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to show it again. And do you know, I haven't had my video on for the whole thing then. I'm glad nobody told me. Obviously, nobody wanted to see me. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. I really feel good about myself.
We were absorbed. We were with Petra.
Petra was more important than me. How dare you? Right, I just need to, right, you show me, and hang on, we've got a technical problem at this minute. Hang on, there we go. And that off, and that on. Hang on, it's not letting me do it. Right, good, excellent. No, it's not letting me do it, sod it. Right, technical difficulties a minute. See,
you're back. Well, I can see part of you. You're merging into Petra.
I can only see the outline.
I can see the outline. There you are.
It's not letting me do it.
No,
Oh, for some reason, it's playing up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to read out the title.
Yeah.
And actually, no, keep it there. See, if I don't press anything. So it's Bruce Norman, Footsteps It's 9 archaeological journeys of romance and discovery. It was made into a TV series, so lots of these were made available. And it's, I would get hold of it. You can get hold of it on Amazon. It'd be a good read, a very good read.
What was that again? 9 archaeological.
9 archaeological journeys of romance and discovery. It's called Footsteps by Bruce Norman.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there we go. Oh, it works
Yes,
now.
thank you.
So, anything? Would you like to say anything, Alan?
No, thank you.
Okay, Keith done. What about Chris and Jim? Do you know what? I undo them. It's every week, right? Which woman and Lady Kathy? Can you like answer the question? No.
Kathy. Well, what did you want, Jim? What were you asking?
Oh, I just wondered if their technology was developed independently from any civilization, or
was their technology developed independently of any other civilization?
A very, very good question. And the answer to that question has to be that I'm going to give the Nabateans the credit where it's due for this technology because it's so unique. And okay, the Romans were locusts. They nicked all their technology from everybody. The Nabateans probably borrowed some of their technology from other people, the engineering, but the hydrology, the understanding of the landscape, that's them. And remember, the Bedouins survive in temperatures that all of us would die in, right? So that tells us they were able to understand heat management, water, and survival. So I'm going to give 80% of the credit to the Bedouins. If there's no other questions, next week we're going to be looking at the Amazon, the people of the Amazon, trying to discover 1 or 2 missing civilizations as well. That's what we're doing next week. If there's no more questions, have you all enjoyed this today except for Keith?
That was rubbish.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay then. Anyway, thank you very much for your support today. Really appreciate this. So I'm going to say goodnight to Kathy, and Karen, Jim, Chris, Goff, Keith, Chris, Pam, and Ellen.
Bye bye, Daddy.
Bye-bye, Stan.
Bye,
Daddy.
Bye-bye,
Daddy. Missing you already.
I know you are missing me already, so do you know what? You and I should go on the stage. It'd look really strange.
Don't go on the stage, Mrs. Worthington.
He's a very naughty boy.
He's fallen in the water.
We're all individuals. I'm not.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus, and so's my wife.
That I can believe. She's Boudica, more like.
Where you from, Big Nose City? Your nose will
Bye-bye,
be
everybody.
twice as far across the face by the time I'm finished. Ta-ra, guys.
Bye.
Right.
Hey,
Oh,
Carl,
it's just.
I watched that program with Hugh Edwards. It's episode 2 by Langorse. You know the island and the moat at Langorse Lake. You know the
Yes.
lake. Is that you by the tripod, with your hair tied back in a ponytail, or is that someone else?
There's someone else. I'm in the one with the chartists.
Oh right, I shall carry on watching the series then.
You have to watch the whole series to see me. I'm in the chartist one, yeah.
Yeah, all the episodes are available except episode 1.
Oh, right.
I had to start off with episode 2, so I'm not sure which one the chartists is.
The chartist one is one of the later ones. The
Right,
Newport,
okay.
the Newport Chartist Risings, Dick Penderring and all the rest of it, yeah.
Right, okay, right. Brilliant. All the best, bye.
Take care, lovely. Bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.